All right, so today in this slideshow or in this video, we're going to take a look at topics 1.1 and 1.3 for AP World. So our focus for this particular video and topics are going to be in East Asia, particularly the Song China Dynasty, and then we're going to move to South and Southeast Asia. So before we begin, think about this question. So what makes a civilization successful? Is it strong leadership, economic growth, religious beliefs, technology? So throughout this lesson, so I want you to think about what factors really contributed to the development of powerful states. Also, in this image here, this is about the part of the world we're in Asia at the moment. So to understand the Song Dynasty, which we're going to talk about in a minute, we need to first look at earlier dynasties. So we had the Qin Dynasty, which created a strong centralized bureaucracy. So think about bureaucracy as basically like a government. Though that became a lasting feature of Chinese government. So this is an example of like continuity. So remember those historical reading skills we talked about in class, because future dynasties will continue to use similar systems. So later on, we had the Shu Dynasty, which reunified China, and that built the Grand Canal. And the Grand Canal was a connector between northern and southern China. And we're going to find out later on that it was very big for trade and the prosperity of Song China. Now we had the Tang Dynasty, which restored stability and expanded Chinese influence throughout East Asia. So one of its most important contributions was the expansion of the civil service exam, which we'll talk about some more later on, with selected government officials based on merit and knowledge of Confucian teachings rather than family background alone. So China also became a center for tributary systems. So neighboring countries like Korea and Vietnam paid tribute to China in exchange for trade opportunities and political recognition. Let's get past this slide. So we also see the rise of Buddhism during this time in world history. So this passage here illustrates one of the Buddhism's most important ideas. So spiritual enlightenment cannot be achieved through material accomplishments alone. Um, yeah. All right. So now we're coming on China. So now we're in the time frame of 1200 to 1450. So one of the major reasons for Song China's prosperity was agricultural innovations. So the introduction of champa rice from Vietnam dramatically increased food production because they ripen quickly and allow multiple harvests per year. Also, before I keep going, remember we talked about those themes in AP War History. You have to know. So this is more the environment theme. So it also combined with irrigation systems, terrace farming, and the Grand Canal. Agricultural productivity really increased significantly. So these developments supported population growth, urbanization, which is people moving to more urban areas in the country, and economic expansion. So this is a perfect example of how people really adopted to their and modified their environments. Now looking at social aspects of Song China, so Confucianism really shaped Song society. So the biggest, so scholar gentry officials, so we call those people, those are the ones who actually pass the civil service exam, which we'll talk about in a minute. They became some of the most powerful social groups in Song China. So society remained highly hierarchical. So there was a like kind of a think about hierarchy like a status. So you had your like top people like the kings, queens, whatever. And at the bottom, you have like your peasants, your slaves. I don't hate to say nobodies, but in the eyes of the people back then, they were. Women's status really declined, particularly among the elites. Something called foot binding, which you look at that picture at the bottom right, became increasingly common. So foot binding was when women would get their feet, especially particularly upper class women, would get their feet, their toes broken to make their feet seem smaller, and it was like a symbol of status and beauty back then. So this showed a very excuse me, values that are associated with Neo-Confucianism. So, in Neo-Confucianism, basically means Confucianism kept spreading. So, Neo-Confucianism is a new version of Confucianism that came to China. Now, looking at politics, The Song dynasty really relied on centralized bureaucracy, which staffed by educated officials. So government positions really expanded, created opportunities for educated men to move up socially through the success on the exam, which is the civil service exam. So the civil service exam was a test that if you wanted to be a part of the government in Song China, you had to take a test, and that test was very heavy in Confucian beliefs. And those that passed the exam were hired to work in the government. Now, political authority continued to be justified through what's called the mandate of heaven. And think about the mandate of heaven is like the ruler saying, "Hey, it's divine that I'm here to rule you, keep authority over you." I mean, to keep it simple. So they pretty much use that to really justify the rule. What else I'm going to say? Oh, so China also remained an influential force throughout East Asia through the tributary system. However, the Song dynasty placed greater emphasis on administration than military expansion, which left them vulnerable to the conquest by the Mongols, which we'll talk about the Mongols in Unit 2. Now, when it comes to Song China's economics aspect, so the E in pieces, the Song economy became one of the most advanced in the world. So commercialization really increased as paper money, banking, and credit systems became more widespread during this time in history. So trade flourished across both land and maritime routes. So if we think about urbanization, so remember that people are moving to more urbanized areas. That really accelerated as a result of all the trade and prosperity that Song China was coming or was getting. And major cities became centers of manufacturing, trade, and culture. So agriculture surplus. So surplus meaning they grew so much stuff that they had. Well, I don't say they had to, but they grew so much that they were able to go out and trade things in the market. So like things like not chopper, right? Excuse me, iron and steel production and things of that nature. Now, thinking about cultural aspects of Song China, so Neo Confucianism became a dominant philosophy of Song China. So Neo Confucianism blended traditional Confucian ideals with elements of Buddhism and Taoism, and it provided a framework for the government, education, and social relationships in Song China. So Buddhism remained influential. It was starting to come in Asia around this time, but Confucianism really overall kind of had the upper hand in Song China. Skip this, skipping this. All right, so when it came to innovations in Song China, so the Song Dynasty was one of the most innovative societies in the world. So important innovations include movable type printing, the gunpowder, the compass. They had ships called junk ships that, which you see the picture at the very bottom, and those ships were allowed for trade of things to be quicker and more expanded trade more, I should say. So these inventions really supported trade. So think about it, it also supported communication and economic growth, while also influencing societies through Afro-Eurasia. All right, so I'm gonna stop right here in this video, and we'll pick up in the second video for topic 1.3.